Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of This Week in AML. I'm John Byrne, Chair of the AMLRS Advisory Board.
And I'm Elliot Berman, our Creative Director. We are excited to welcome you to the This Week in AML podcast,
where we explore key news and developments in the global financial crime prevention community.
Hi, John. How are you this week?
Hi, Elliot. Really good. We're, as we both know, we're working hard toward next week's partnership forum, first one ever on the East Coast. We're very excited about that. So I know you've been working real hard with the team on last minute topics and issues. And, this is going to set the stage, I believe, for, a place on the East Coast where law enforcement and bankers and fintech execs and others can connect. So I know that that's top of mind of both of us.
Yes, and I'll put in the shameless plug. There's still time to register for the forum. You can go to AMLPF, F as in Frank.com. And if you go, there's a big red register now tab there. Please do so. We're going to be at the Mayflower Hotel on Connecticut Avenue. And we have a great lot. We do truly have a great program lined up. Big senior people from the agencies who are going to, and practitioners together talking practical, what's going on, exchanging information, and each getting smarter from having been with the others. So looking forward to it. So for this week's podcast, I'm sure you saw Secretary Yellen's remarks late last week on digital assets, a continuing topic in the regulatory universe.
Right, and that's obviously also something that we'll be covering next week, the various crypto responses from all the law enforcement agencies. Yeah, the speech was delivered locally at American University, and she mentioned a few things that I thought were definitely relevant to our world. One is the president signed an executive order a couple of weeks ago, and I know we've talked about that briefly, for a government-wide approach to digital asset policy. And so she raised a number of things that are going on. She gave sort of a historical background of payment issues, but how important it was to be opened to both innovation, but to recognize that you base your regulation on technology alone, but on utility, that sort of thing. So I thought it's a useful outline, I think, of the secretary's views, but also sort of government-wide. And I think the list of lessons that she had there are particularly relevant.
Yeah, agreed. And it was reminded me, she was on the board of governors of the Federal Reserve, and now she's a cabinet secretary, but she is an academic. And I mean that in the best way,
Right.
And so you could see, this could have been a lecture to a graduate class on monetary policy.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that one of the things that is useful to understand in terms of the themes that she said, with the themes is that we've already sort of mentioned, the importance of technology, but not to overreact to technology, to sort of stay ahead of the game. And she referenced the 2008 financial crisis and all the new products and how, frankly, the government really didn't keep up to speed with that. And they want to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes this time.
Yes, agreed. She also, and you mentioned her, that part of this was about innovation. She used a phrase in what she called her very final lesson. In the title of that, we need to work together to ensure responsible innovation. And I think I think that's a good phrase. There's many kinds of innovation that can happen, and I think her point is, just because we know how, we can figure out how to do it, from a policy perspective, you still have to figure out, does it make sense to have it done? And if it does it need a framework? And that, in fact, is what governmental policy and governmental regulation is. It's a framework within which all kinds of innovation operate. We think of the kind of innovation that's happening today, but most of the things that we take for granted, even think of as old school, they were innovations at a time. And some of them not all that long ago. I mean, you and I certainly grew up without having a personal mobile phone. I mean,
Right.
If someone had a mobile phone, it was this big honking thing in their car, and it took up the actual transmitter took up half the trunk of the car. And there were about 5 people in the world that had them. But now we all have them in our pockets, and we take it for granted. But it was innovation, and it did grow up in the within the framework of telecommunications policy and regulation. So I think as we all move forward, in my opinion, rather than looking at government's looking at this and people saying it's stifling innovation, I think, it is a part of how innovation actually happens. It happens sometimes ahead and sometimes within the structure of how does it fit into everything else?
Yeah, she had some, besides very comprehensive comments, some very simple themes, right? She said about technology and being neutral and encouraging innovation. It's illegal to evade taxes, launder money, or avoid sanctions. And it doesn't matter whether you're using checks, wires, or crypto. So I think that's pretty important to recognize, because a lot of people are sort of on both sides of this rather than in the middle. Some are saying this is the greatest thing. It's going to just make inclusion and financial access available to everybody. And then the other side, it says we're never going to figure out what the criminals are doing. And the answer is sort of in the middle, like it is with everything. And she goes into specific referencing to anti-money laundering and CTF frameworks like you referenced, working with our international counterparts. And then one of the examples in here, she said, just this week, OFAC took strong action against the world's largest darknet market, Hydra, as well as what I think is called Garantex, I think that's how you pronounce it, a ransomware enabling virtual currency exchange. So, just examples of all that. And then she references what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the national risk assessment, and saying that based on the task force and all the work we're doing, we're going to build on that risk assessment that identifies, key financing risks, illicit financing risks associated with digital assets. So again, working globally, working with the private sector, which they reference, encouraging innovation, those are all great goals. But as long as that's the strategy, all those referenced groups should be at the table trying to figure this out, as opposed to saying, don't regulate us, don't limit what we're trying to do. Instead, offer up that you understand that these challenges need to be met.
Yes. And I think I think as you pointed out a little earlier in our conversation, this is a worthwhile read, and it's not terribly long, but it's a worthwhile read because it does a nice job of blending history and creating a lot of context, I think, for the conversations that have been ongoing in the industry and at the policy level for a while, and they're accelerating. She talks a little bit about central bank digital currencies. She talks about, in terms of regular commerce, that while it may be not all that practical for cryptocurrencies to be used in regular commerce, she says, to buy a sandwich or a gallon of milk. She says, she talks about other digital assets like stable coins or potentially central bank digital currencies could succeed, there's a quote, at being more widely used as a means of exchange, raising potential benefits and risks. The whole idea that she recognizes that because of the volatility, among other things, that cryptocurrencies may not be a practical long-term way to do regular commerce. And her reference here is buy a sandwich or a gallon of milk, but that digital assets, like other digital assets, stable coin or potentially, central bank digital currencies could succeed, in being used as a regular day-to-day means of exchange, raising benefits and, risks potentially. So I was just beyond that, just saying that, this is a good piece to read and get context for all of the conversations that are going on.
I agree.
So let's see. We've got a webinar coming up the 28th of April, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, live stream. You can register on our website. It's about domestic terrorism. We're going to look at it not just from a U.S., but from a global perspective. We've got a couple of great panelists, guests who will be chatting with us, well-known experts. So we'd like to have you join that. And then, John, next month we're doing a webinar on the national priorities, I think.
Yeah, the hope is that the regs will be out by then. So it's not tentative in terms of the schedule, but we may make a last-minute adjustment if we think it's going to come, in the following month. But if it does come, we have some chance to talk about it. We've done a lot of programming on priorities. Conferences have as well. Obviously, what we're looking for very carefully is what's the regs? What are they going to look like? And will they recognize what FinCEN said they would? And that is not all priorities or all institutions should be treated the same.
Yes. Okay. Well, you have a great week. Rest of the week. I will see you next week, and we'll probably have to find a few minutes while we're at the forum to sit down and record for our session next week.
Sounds good. Take care. Stay safe.
Yep. You too. Bye-bye.